Hey there dreamboats, this video is a bit different to the stuff that I normally put out on the channel in a way, because it's kind of a bit more of an opinion piece, and I suppose it's fair to say it's a rant, although I've never ever titled any of my videos rant, because I'm not really having a rant per se. I'm just kind of occasionally getting on my soapbox a little bit, occasionally getting a little bit impassioned, but I wouldn't call it a rant at all. I'm not about rants on my channel, and I certainly enjoy watching a good rant. I'm not saying that I have anything against it if it's done in a way that is interesting and impassioned and I can get into, but I'm definitely not in rant mode. I just want to make that clear, but this is certainly a conversation that I've had before with people that I feel strongly about, and I'm really interested in getting your opinions and your input on this, and also just basically putting forth why I feel the way that I do about this. Now, as you can see from the title of the video, I have chosen somewhere in the title, I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like yet because I'm filming this quite a while before putting it up, but I have decided to put somewhere in the title the words psychic showboating. Now, this is not something that I've heard anywhere else, but this is what I call it. And so I want to begin by explaining what psychic showboating is. Psychic showboating for me is when somebody who professes to be psychic or to have the gift, or you know, really is very in touch with their intuitive ability and is passionate about developing it or using it on a regular basis, actually decides to tune into you or has some kind of a download pertaining to you, and they choose to actually come out with it and almost try to kind of impress you with it. This is not the only way in which psychic showboating can take place, I don't think. I think that in a way you could be a professional psychic showboater, because if you for example work for crowds of people who've come to maybe get in touch with a lost loved one, for example, then part of what you're doing as the person who is going around that crowd and tuning into people and getting information is you're showboating. You're proving to people that you can do what you say you can do. You are working to impress people. You are showing people your tricks, what you're capable of, etc. So I suppose that in a way is showboating as well, but the way that I'm kind of describing it and the way that I'm using the term is when somebody who is a psychic or who has the gift, or however you want to say it, decides that they are going to basically tell someone about a download that they're having, something that's coming through for them, and it won't be in a setting where that psychic has been paid for their services and there is an understanding that the individual is going to receive information. For me, psychic showboating is much more in those situations where the psychic has not been asked to provide any information, money has not changed hands. It's almost as though this individual is just kind of wanting to, what is the word I'm looking for? Let me just think. It's almost like they're doing it in a way that has some shock value to it, or not even that, it's not that. Hang on, let me just, I want to say they derail the conversation by, no, wait a minute, oh, for goodness sake. Okay, jump cut. It's kind of like it's their party trick. It's a way for them to show their talent. It's a way sometimes for them to receive some attention. It's a way for them to maybe get closer with a person really quickly, or get into a deeper kind of conversation really quickly. There could be a number of different reasons why a psychic or a clairvoyant would decide to expose some kind of download, some kind of insight, a voice that they're hearing, something like that, without actually getting the express consent of the individual that they're directing this towards. There could be a number of reasons. It might not necessarily be malicious, it might not necessarily be egoic, it could just be that they have never really thought about the negative implications of doing this to somebody. It could be because they genuinely just want to develop a closeness and develop a bond with somebody, and if they have that intuitive hit, then they might want to give it to that person. I do think that there are malicious reasons as well. I definitely think there are some psychic showboaters who are not actually receiving a genuine download, but are actually expressing that they are receiving one to cause trouble and to be malicious sometimes. I think that can definitely be the case too. I want to make the point that I am a particularly privacy driven person in some ways, and I know that's something that I haven't been shy about saying on the channel before. Like, I am more concerned with privacy than quite a few people that I know. I am more privacy driven and more reserved about certain things and certain information about me, etc., than other people a lot of the time. So I acknowledge that I'm coming from this place where privacy and what's appropriate and the idea of reserving certain things until a certain level of closeness has been established might be actually more important to me than it is to the average bear, and I get that, and that's fine. So as I'm talking, your mileage might vary on how much this stuff pisses you off or how much it's even important to you. But for me personally, I really believe that part of the etiquette that should come with receiving downloads, having strong intuitive insights, hearing voices, etc., is asking the other person if they would like to know the information before you come out and say it. Asking that person if it's okay to go ahead and reveal what it is that you have heard or felt or experienced before going ahead and doing it. I think that's a really important thing, and I think that for a number of different reasons, you know, and I won't go into them all, but firstly, and probably most importantly, just because you have a download about a person or a strong intuitive hit about a person doesn't mean that they necessarily will be in anywhere near the kind of mood where they want to think about that at a particular time. They might be feeling really jovial, really happy, just really, you know, carefree. And when you expose like a download you've had about them or something you want to reveal to them about their future or about what they might secretly be feeling or whatever, you are literally taking the reins of that person's mood and that person's vibration, and you are deciding to direct it down a different kind of avenue. You might really shit on that person's day. You might really shit on that person's experience of whatever it is they're doing in that moment. So I think that's one thing. Another thing is that a lot of the time when somebody who experiences downloads or has psychic abilities or whatever decides to say something to an individual about something they've experienced, it's normally not something carefree and joyful. It's normally not something like, hey, I really sense strongly that you're going to want to have the foie gras at dinner this evening. It's not normally that. It's normally something like, you know, I sense that you're still really in pain about a past relationship, or soon you're going to have some kind of an illness and, you know, you'll get through it, but at the time it'll be really difficult. It's always something that somebody's got to really think about and go, oh, fucking hell. Like, well, a lot of the time it is. A lot of the time when there is a download that comes through and a psychic just wants to blurt it out to somebody, it's not normally the kind of thing that can be brushed off. It does affect a person's mood. It does affect a person's vibration. And I don't think that that is necessarily appropriate, and I don't think that that is necessary, actually, full stop. When I have a dream that includes somebody else, I tell them, if I know them or whatever, that I've had a dream about them, but I don't tell them the content of the dream. If I've got time and I want to tell them the content of the dream, I will say, do you want to know what the dream was about? Because I'm aware that not everybody does want to know when they've been seen in a dream, when they've been encountered in a dream. People have very different beliefs about what dreams are all about, and it might really unsettle somebody to know what's happened with their image and their likeness in a dream of mine. And, you know, for some people, it's just dull to hear other people's dreams anyway. That's kind of off topic, but I mean, for me, I really love hearing people's dreams. If somebody stays with me in my flat, or I'm like with a lover and we wake up together, I'm literally, I try and get them before they've even rubbed the sleep out of their eyes, and I'm like, hey, did you have a dream? What did you dream? Because I'm just really into that. I'm about that life. But, you know, a lot of people just don't want to hear about dreams anyway. But I'm very careful if I encounter somebody on the astral plane, or if I encounter somebody in the dreamscape, I don't just come out with what I saw and what happened and what they said, etc., because I know that it's not always appropriate and people don't always want to know. If I have a strong intuitive feeling about someone, about what they're feeling, about what they ought to do, about any of those kinds of things, I would never just come out with that, and I certainly wouldn't come out with that in a really kind of definitive, domineering way where I'm like, this is what you should do, or this is going to happen, or I have foreseen that this is the way this is going to go down. I would just never talk to somebody like that, even if I did feel really, really sure or whatever. If we were having a conversation about the matter at hand and I felt that I had insights, I would say, look, I've got some insights on this. You know, they might be emotive. I'm not sure whether or not you want to hear them or if you just want space held, but if you want to know what my thoughts are, I'm more than happy to divulge them to you. That that is etiquette. That is the etiquette that I think anybody with a grasp on their intuition, anybody with any empathic ability, anybody who claims psychic ability should certainly be following. And I feel like a lot of crappy, low vibes come around when somebody doesn't exhibit that etiquette. On my journey, on my kind of spiritual journey and my journey of psycho-spiritual learning, etc., I've encountered quite a few people who've said that they used to do this in the past. They used to be really just kind of like, I've had a vision that this is what's going to happen, or you know, this is how long this relationship's going to last for, or whatever, and they've just been really blunt and really blatant, and they have not asked for consent. They have not asked that individual whether or not they want to know. And then later down the line, those people have looked back at their own behaviour and they've been like, shit, I really shouldn't have been like that. That wasn't very considerate. That was very much me kind of taking over the vibe and taking over, you know, this person's headspace, when really they may not actually have wanted to know that. They didn't ask me for a psychic reading. No money changed hands, and I really shouldn't have taken over their headspace in that way. And I think it's really good if we can look back at the way that we may have just blurted out whatever was going on, you know, in our kind of like, from our woo-woo perspective, and think to ourselves, you know, even if I was right on about that, I probably shouldn't have actually blurted that out without asking the person first if they wanted to know what my thoughts were. That was really inconsiderate of me. So now it gets into story time. Now I'm going to talk about something that happened to me recently, which is what actually led me to making this video. So I went into a shop one day that I've never been into before, quite recently. At the time of making this video, I would say that it was just over a week ago. And inside the shop there were crystals and witchy bits and pieces, as well as crafting stuff. So it was really cool. And I got into a conversation with the shop owner, and I'm not going to lie, she was adorable. Okay, I don't really have any hard feelings towards her. She was a really lovely woman. We had a really good conversation. It was humorous. We had some things in common. Neither of us have really lived in the area for very long, and we were just laughing about the quirkiness of the area and different things like that, and how it's so different from where we were before. So it was a really nice conversation. So during the course of this conversation, she asked me what I do for a living, and I told her that I'm a spiritual counsellor and I sling cards. And she said, oh, that's great. And then I decided to buy a couple of necklaces from her. And well, first of all, we talked a little bit about spirituality. So she said, I'm assuming that you have a spiritual practice then? And I said, yeah. And she said, do you go to a group? Do you go to a Unitarian church? And I said, no, I just practice alone. And she was like, yeah, you seem like kind of a more solo person when it comes to that. And she said, I am as well. And that was the extent of it. She never told me she was psychic. She never said she was a witch or what she was doing spiritually. And then when I took these necklaces to the counter to buy them from her, she went really, really quiet, and she looked at me, and then she said, have you lost someone recently? And I sort of went quiet for a moment, because I have lost someone in the last few months. And I thought, well, I'll answer honestly, because I'm assuming what she means is, has anyone died? So I said, yeah, I lost my uncle earlier this year. And she said, the next thing that she said was, it was unexpected, it was shocking. And I said, yeah, it was. And then she said, he didn't get a chance to hug you before he left. And I thought to myself, well, you could probably ascertain that from the fact that I've just confirmed to you that it was shocking and it was unexpected. So I don't know, I felt like that was something that certainly could have been figured out. But I just said, I think it would be kind of difficult for him to hug me before he left because he died in Cambodia. And then she said, well, yeah, there we go. That's what I mean. Like, he didn't get a chance to hug you before he left. So she was kind of taking my answer and being like, well, that confirms that what I've said is true. Anyway, then she said that she gave me a message that she said my uncle wanted me to know. And then she said, your uncle wants me to give you a hug. So we hugged. And that was kind of the end of that. That was the name of that tune. Now, let me just stress that I was not angry about this. Now, a few years previous to this, I can definitely see myself as being a person that would have been really infuriated by this kind of invasive, or what I would have previously seen as an invasive experience. I definitely would have felt like that woman had more than overstepped her mark, and I definitely wouldn't have tried to see things from her perspective. I would have just been really pissed off and probably would have left quite disgusted. Maybe would not even have bought the products that I had in my hand that I was going to buy from her, because back in the day I was really like, I was pretty hardcore about that kind of thing, you know. I was very much like, you don't overstep a boundary and you don't ask about things like that, and it's not appropriate if you don't know a person. Nowadays I've mellowed a little bit. I can't say that I found it to be a really overwhelmingly positive experience, because I was not thinking about my uncle at that moment in time. I was just having a really nice day. I was just about to go to my gym induction and get in the swimming pool at the new gym that I was joining. So I was feeling really good. I was feeling really fresh. I was feeling ready for my induction, and I just thought I'd pop into this shop while I had time and maybe buy myself a gift. So I was in a really high vibe place, and my uncle being brought up was not pleasant for me. It just wasn't something that I was thinking about at that moment in time. And if nothing else, you know, she was correct that my uncle did leave us unexpectedly and in quite tragic and dark circumstances. So that was on my mind then. That was what came to mind. But the main thing that really struck me about this experience that I had of this person doing what I call a little bit of psychic showboating was that she was so concerned about like how well she was doing in being right, that I noticed afterwards that she didn't even give me her condolences. She didn't even say, I'm so sorry about your uncle passing. It was like I confirmed for her that he died suddenly, and it was a shock. And then it was almost like she was pleased with that because it meant that she was correct. And then when I said, well, it would have been hard for him to hug me goodbye or hug me before he died because he lived in Cambodia, which is thousands of miles away, she instantly took that and flipped it and went, well, exactly, there we go. So, you know, basically saying, so I'm right, there we are. He lived thousands of miles away, so he couldn't possibly have hugged you. And it kind of struck me afterwards. I was thinking, wow, this woman that I had only just met, who literally had spoken to me for only a matter of minutes, had found out that I had lost my uncle just earlier that year in tragic circumstances. And her response really was almost one of glee. Not glee on her face, not like really externally presentable glee, but inside of her she was relieved and happy that her insights were correct, that in fact he did die tragically and suddenly. Well, first of all, she was happy that someone had died, that I had lost someone in the family, that he had died suddenly, and that we didn't get to cuddle before he died. Now, that has obviously taken my brain in that moment to thinking about my dead uncle, thinking about the fact that we didn't get a chance to have a cuddle before he died, thinking about times in my childhood where we did hug and we did sit on the couch together and read stories together, and thinking about how far away he was when he died, and the whole process of you know, getting him cremated and having the memorial here, and all of that stuff was suddenly flooding through my head again, and thinking about how I needed to ring my mum and make sure that her grieving process was going okay. And the whole time this woman never said, not even as a goodbye, like, by the way, I'm really sorry about your uncle, my condolences, my deepest sympathies, I'm sorry for your loss, just the normal shit that you say when you find out that someone has died. And that's what I mean about psychic showboating, is that I think we have to very much always question what the motives are and whether or not it's ever a good idea. And if you are listening to this and you are somebody who's done this kind of thing, who has said, I'm tuning into your energy, I'm tuning into your memories, somebody wants to say something to you, have you experienced this recently, etc., I really just want to urge you to think about what you might be doing to that other person when you come on strong with insights that you're having or things that you want to say that you're experiencing about them without their consent. You're plunging them potentially into something that they do not want to think about at that moment in time, and they also may not be emotionally equipped to think about at that moment in time. And I think my experience with this psychic showboater in this shop very plainly shows me that a lot of the time the intent is not really correct. To find out, as I said, that somebody has just lost someone tragically, and to be more concerned about you getting the reading right and you proving that you're psychic than you are about offering comfort or sympathy or a kind word to that person, really shows you what kind of an underlying motive there is. And I don't think that this is an uncommon experience that I've had. I don't think this experience is rare. I think a lot of psychic showboaters are going around doing this kind of thing. They are invading where they're not wanted, they are giving insights that have not been asked for, and they are leaving people with a totally different energy. And luckily for me, because of who I am, because of what I do, because of my spirituality, I was able to quickly get myself back on par, get myself back on the perch, go to my induction and be perfectly fine. And I recognised that probably the experience was more something that woman needed in a way. I think she needed the hug. I think she needed that feeling of bonding and connection. And I've come to a point on my journey now where I can accept that in people, where I'm not really angry about that anymore, because I feel I've got that love and I've got that compassion to give. Whereas a few years ago, I wasn't that person. I would have been really angry with her. But not everyone is me. Not everyone is like me. Not everyone can just pull themselves out of a funk immediately that somebody else has put them into. And I do think that the reason that she exposed this download, whether it was real, whether it wasn't, I don't know, is because of the part of the conversation where I said that I was a spiritual counsellor and I'm a spiritual person. And I think that to her was almost like an invitation for her to be like, I know you've lost someone and this is the information I'm getting and this is what your uncle wants you to know, all without my consent. That to me is invasive. And just because somebody is on a spiritual journey or follows any kind of spiritual teaching doesn't mean they necessarily want to know what the workings of your head are or what's coming through for you psychically or intuitively or whatever. So, you know, I feel like there are a lot of people who've been burned by an experience of being psychically showboated, but I think there are also some people out there who are doing it right now, who are psychic showboaters, and who really just need to think about the true motives for doing that, and at least consider asking somebody for consent before you do that. If you really feel like there are some insights coming through for you and they're going to be really useful to a person that you're speaking to, and you really feel like in your heart of hearts you're supposed to say them to that person, I would really, really urge you to just say, I have got some insights coming through and some things that really strongly I feel are about you, or, you know, I'm getting an energy coming off of you and it's really saying something to me. I don't want to go any further because obviously you might not be about that life and you might not be interested or you might not want to know, but I just wanted to say that I'm getting some stuff coming through if you want to know. You know, if you really feel like you've got to say something to somebody, at least ask if they're interested in knowing. Don't risk putting them in a completely different headspace to the one that they were in before. And certainly don't risk letting your ego become the deciding factor in whether or not you're going to speak. Because I really feel that in the experience that I had a few days ago, a week or so ago, that was what was happening. I think it was feeding her ego more to know that she was right than actually her thinking, oh, this poor girl's just lost her uncle, you know. And giving me a word of comfort. There was no word of comfort forthcoming from her. It's just really weird, isn't it, that there is this element to psychic ability that is more about being delighted that you've gotten it right and that you were on the right track and that you can say, see, I'm psychic, than it is about really connecting with someone and connecting with their story and maybe realising that they have been through some tragedy, which you might well have foreseen and suggested, but then finding out that they've had that tragedy and not even responding in a way that could be considered compassionate. It makes me think, what's the point in your spiritual gifts then? What's the point in you having the gift of sight or the gift of the opening of the third eye? What's the point in you being able to prove that you know something about me if in the same breath you actually are lacking in compassion and lacking in empathy and lacking in the kind of decency which would normally propel a human to say, I'm sorry for your loss, or, you know, how are you feeling now? How's the family? Anything. What makes a person think that they can delve so far into somebody else's story, but in a way that completely lacks any compassion or empathy or feeling? Is that spiritual? I think just because in that instance, that woman was like, ah, there we go, you did lose someone and they didn't get to hug you before they died tragically, doesn't really mean she's a spiritual person. Because to me, living spiritually, living in the essence of spiritual principles, it's a lot less about proving what you can do. It's a lot less about, you know, being that, you know, showing that party trick and being like, see, I have spiritual capability. And it's more about connecting, being kind, showing fucking compassion. And in that instance, that woman ticked the first box, but she really didn't tick the second. And I think the second is what really matters. I suppose my message to anyone who has ended up being a bit of a psychic showboater or finds that they often do it is think about your reasons for doing it and consider asking for permission before you do it. Not everybody is interested, not everybody wants to know, and not everybody can handle what you're about to say to them. If you enjoy the feeling of psychic showboating, there's plenty of opportunities for you to do it in a way where people actually want you to. You know, you can take money for readings, you can give readings to friends and family, you can go to groups, psychic groups, where you exchange information and insights with each other. You can do it in ways where it's been condoned, you know, where it's been consented to. Do it there. Don't just come out with it over dinner or at a house party or when you're serving somebody in a shop. That's not your place, and that's very strongly what I feel about it, is that it's not your place, and it's not really conforming to, I guess, what would be a baseline for me of psychic and spiritual etiquette. I definitely think, just to be clear, that there is such a thing as like non-psychic showboating as well. I think that there are a lot of people, like me for example, who do not claim the term psychic. I don't actually like the term psychic for me, and I might go into that in another video. Although I have had readings and sessions with people who do use the term psychic, I've got nothing against them for using it. It just has different connotations for me, and I don't like it. But for sure, I think I could be a non-psychic showboater if I was so inclined. I'm not so inclined. I'm very careful with what I divulge to people and what I say to people. But I think there is such a thing as a non-psychic showboater as well. I definitely met one of them in one of my ex-boyfriend's friends who had a degree in psychology and was doing a master's in psychology and art therapy. And she was very much about analysing people without their consent, and she did it off the back of what would otherwise be a perfectly like ordinary and comfortable conversation. So I remember there was one instance where I gave somebody a compliment about the coat that they were wearing when they walked into the pub where we were drinking, and she just turned to me and went, "You give a lot of compliments, don't you, Kellyanne? I think that probably means something, I reckon." And she just started like kind of going off on one about what it could potentially mean, that I was very pro giving compliments to people and you know, wasn't scared to say when I thought something they said was cool or something they were wearing was nice. And it really infuriated me. And I remember I was a lot younger then, and I just knocked back my beer and I just walked out. I was like, you know what, I haven't come here to be analysed by you. I haven't come here to be dissected like that. I haven't come here to be placed onto some kind of you know, like box so that you can examine my psychology and talk about it in the pub in front of people. And so that really pissed me off as well. And I feel that was kind of like a version of non-psychic showboating, where somebody's like, I'm switched on to who you really are. I'm switched on to what's really going on with you because of my expertise or my reading or my perceptive nature. I can tell you right now why you're really doing something. And I think that is really unpleasant as well, and that is not nice. And that can definitely happen in the spiritual community too, even though it's not the main focus of this video. I think that if you have been psychically showboated by somebody and it was a really uncomfortable experience for you, then you can definitely use that experience. You can definitely think about what it meant to you, why it upset you. You can use it, you know, you can use it to grow, you can use it to expand. I think that when these uncomfortable experiences occur, they can definitely put us in touch with our shadow stuff. They can put us in touch with how we want to interact with people in the world, how we might like to respond next time something like that happens. They get us to thinking about our boundaries and stuff like that. And, you know, I guess how we let people treat us. There's all kinds of different ways that it could go. I don't think that if you end up interacting with a psychic showboat and they tell you some shit you didn't want to know, or they say some stuff about you that offends you, that it necessarily has to be a bad thing. It's unpleasant, and I'd rather it didn't happen, but I think you can take it and turn it to your advantage, and I think a lot of people do that. But if somebody, like if a psychic tells you something that you really, that scares you, for example, when you're going to die or when you're going to break up with your partner that you love very much, you might not be able to shake that. You might be the kind of person who can't really ever get over that feeling that that person could be right. And that could have a really detrimental effect on you. That could really freak you out. And I know that this has happened to people. Sometimes a psychic showboat will just turn to someone and say, someone in your family is going to become gravely ill in the next 3 months and they're barely going to make it through, but they, you know, will make it through, but whatever. whatever, or something like that. That's the kind of thing that can really just, it can freak somebody out. It gets a hold over somebody. And that's why I think that a lot of people that do psychic showboating do it from an egoic and almost messianic place, where they want to be in control. They want to be in charge of somebody else's mindset. They want to get inside somebody else's head or have the power to be able to freak somebody out. I think that it does sometimes come from an egoic place when you say something as a psychic showboat, whether you really got a download about it or not, I don't care. If it's something about death or sickness or danger or heartbreak, and you say it to somebody without their consent, you've really got to be prepared to examine the reasons why you did that and think, were those reasons actually pure, or was I just trying to, did I have a messiah complex in that moment? Basically, was I trying to take control in a way that was not appropriate and in a way that was serving my ego but was not really serving the other person's needs? What do you think about the idea of psychic showboating? What are your opinions about spiritual etiquette and etiquette for psychics? When someone experiences a download, an intuitive insight, a vision, something that they want to impart to somebody else, should they do so without the consent of that person? What should be the protocol? And have you ever experienced being psychically showboated, and have you been the psychic showboat? And what do you think then of the ideas that have been posited in this video and how you can connect them to your own experiences? I would love to know. I'm going to be poring over the comments section for this one because I really am interested in the answers. Thank you so much for watching this video. Much love, guys. Blessed be.